Hey there, Stampers. Happy Friday. Welcome to this week's live where we are going to create 6 cards from one 6x12 piece of patterned paper. My name is Sherry Roth. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Alberta, Canada, and every Friday I go live with a crafty project. Sometimes it's scrapbooking, sometimes it's cards, but today we're going to make some Christmas cards. So let me share kind of what I've pulled out in case you want to craft along or come back and craft along afterwards. Oh, let's turn the volume off of my iPad here. Okay, so I have chosen a piece of the Winter Meadows patterned paper, and it measures 6 inches high by 12 inches across. So if your paper is directional, you want to cut it that way. Okay, it is double-sided, and I do plan on using both sides. So you'll want to make sure that it's a pattern where both sides look good together. Okay, now that is part of the Winter Meadow DSP package. I don't have a lot of it left. I'm nearing the end of my Christmas crafting, so I don't have a ton of Christmas pattern paper left. But here are a few other patterns that are in that paper collection. I love this one. And then there's the back side. And then there's this. I have used so much of this pattern paper. It's absolutely stunning. And then that one. And then there's a blue toned one with some trees on it. And I can't remember the other pattern that we're missing, but those are some of the patterns that are in there. So the other things that you'll need is some card bases. So for this for today's live, I am actually using note cards and envelopes. So these are a little bit smaller. So folded, they measure 3.5 inches, 3.5 inches by 5 inches. Yes, 3.5 inches by 5 inches. However, if you do not have note cards and envelopes, that's not a problem. You can still take the exact same measurements and add them to a full-size white card base, okay? Hey, Kevin, welcome. Oh, good, you're following along. Fun. All right, so if you don't have note cards and envelopes, then just choose regular size card bases. All the same measurements will work. It's just you'll have a little bit of a wider white border on your cards, that's all, okay? I love using our note cards and envelopes for quick and easy crafting because it saves 2 steps. They come in a package of 20. The cards are cut and scored for you, so you are ready to go. And you get the envelopes as well. All right, so those can be found in our annual catalog. So you'll need 6 card bases. You'll need a scrap piece of white. So you can use a bunch of different scraps, or you can just cut half a sheet. Half a sheet should be plenty. You'll need some embellishments and some twine. So I love fibers. I love twines and ribbons. So I chose 2 different ribbons and a twine. So this is from the Simply Elegant twine combo pack, and it comes with silver and gold. So I chose silver. So we're working with silvers today, or I am working with silvers. And then this is the 1/8 inch ribbon from the gold and silver ribbon combo pack, which is from the online exclusives. And then I've got the white and silver sheer ribbon from the September to December mini catalog, which I am so excited to say is back in stock. Well, at least it was yesterday. So hopefully it's still available. But I love this ribbon. I think this is my second spool that I'm using. I absolutely love it. And then I've got an embellishment. I will probably use the Pretty Peacock and the clear ones. I probably won't use the pink on this. And these are the adhesive backed sequins trio. I also threw in a little bit of vellum, and you'll need a full piece of cardstock in a coordinating color. So I chose Lost Lagoon because it works really well with my patterned paper. Okay. One of the great things about Stampin' Up! Is that everything coordinates. So you can always find things that match. Okay, so that's for the consumable supplies. And then as far as inks and stamps, I am using the Merriest Trees bundle. So this bundle here, and most of the pieces I think all of the stamps and most of the pieces are coming from this stamps or this die set. However, I did cut a couple of circles from the Stylish Shapes dies. So if you don't have these dies, you may want to consider adding them to your collection because these are probably my most used dies, but circle punches work well, or any shape. Actually, it doesn't even have to be circles. Okay. And then I've pulled out 2 ink colors, Lost Lagoon and Pretty Peacock. I also pulled out Lost Lagoon and Pretty Peacock Stampin' Write markers in case I want to switch up the colors on my stamps and do multicolored images. The other thing that I have is I will be doing some stenciling in the background on one of the cards. Now, if you don't have stencils, don't worry. I will kind of give suggestions along the way if you don't have any of these products. And then one of the cards, I'm also using this modern oval punch. But again, you can use a different shape. You can use any labeled dies that you have. You can use circles. Anything will work. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start by cutting, let's start by cutting our patterned paper. So we're going to pull in our paper trimmer and we're going to cut it. So we've got the 6-inch length at the top and we're going to cut it at 4.5 inches. So all of these patterns will actually work with a 6x6 paper pack as well. Okay, so we're going to slice this up at 4.5 inches. We're just going to set that aside for now. And then we're going to rotate this and we're going to cut it at 3 inches. And set that aside. We're going to cut this at 3 inches. Set it aside. And then we're going to do this one at 3 inches. And set it aside. And then this last one, we're going to rotate and we're going to cut it at 3 inches from the long side. Okay. And we're going to use both of these pieces. We're just going to flip this over. We're going to use both of those pieces for one of the cards. Now this piece, we're actually going to do pretty much, well, almost the same thing. We're going to cut it at 3 inches and 3 inches. And 3 inches. So we have 4 3 by 1.5 inch pieces. So our patterned paper is all cut. So we're going to set that aside. Now we're going to bring in our cardstock and we are going to slice it. So we've got the short edge at the top and we're going to cut it at 4 5/8. So 4 5/8. I know lots of people have problems with some of these not the more common measurements. So 4 5/8 is 2 ticks after the 4.5 inch mark. Okay. So 4 5/8. And we're going to cut all the way down to the bottom. And you'll be able to find all the measurements over on my blog afterwards as well. However, I would refer back to this video so that you can cut it just the way it needs to be cut so that you're not wasting any cardstock. Okay, so then this larger piece that we have left, we're going to rotate it so that the longer edge is at the top. I know I'm going pretty fast here. And we're going to cut it at 3 1/8. So that is 2 ticks after the 3. On this trimmer anyways. I know not all trimmers measure in a 1/16 of an inch. So 3 1/8. And then 3 1/8 again. And 3 1/8 again. Okay, so from this piece, we're going to cut 2 1/2-inch strips. So I'm going to cut 1/2 inch and then another 1/2 inch. And one of the things I love about the Stampin' Up! Trimmer is this little extension on this side. When you're doing small measurements, it's so much easier to measure on the right and be able to cut. So you can measure up to 1.5 inches on this side, which is so nice. Okay, so this piece we're not going to use, or maybe we will use on the inside of our cards, but we'll just set that aside. Now we've got 2 1/2-inch strips here. One of them we're going to leave as is, so it's 4.5 inches long. The other one we're going to trim to 3 inches. This little scrap we're not going to use. Okay. And then from this longer piece, we are going to cut a 1 3/4 inch. So I've got the long edge at the top, and I'm going to cut it at 1 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to rotate it and cut it at 3 1/4. And again, this piece we won't use, but this piece we will. Now this leftover piece is actually going to be used for die cutting. So I'm just going to bring in the piece that where I cut all my pieces. So I've gone ahead and I've die cut these just so this video doesn't go on forever. I know if you're crafting along, it's going to take a little bit of time. But if you're watching the replay, you can kind of pause it. So what I've done is I've taken these trees, and there are several different sizes. So you want this second largest tree, you want 2 of them. So I cut 1 here and 1 here. So you want 2 of those. And then the third largest tree, you want 3 of these. So you can see I've got 1 here, I've got 1 here, and 1 here. Okay. And then the second smallest tree, you want 1 of these. That's right there. And then this smallest tree, which I don't even know if I would call this a tree. They're meant to kind of be layered. I cut 1 of those. Okay, so that's what you want to cut from this Lost Lagoon cardstock. Now, if you don't have this Merriest Trees dies, just look at your dies or your punches or your stamp sets and just see what you have to replace the trees. So if you don't have trees, maybe you've got leaves or sprigs or something else. Maybe you've got a tree punch. So there are lots of different things, or a tree stamp that you can stamp and then cut out. So there's lots of things in your collection that I'm sure that you've got that you could replace it with. Okay, so that's what the rest of this cardstock is used for. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start kind of layering our bits and pieces. So when I'm mass producing cards, which making 6, I don't know if it's mass producing, but we're making multiples. I like to go kind of assembly line style. And I know that we're not making all the same cards this time. Okay, hang on. Am I missing a 2? Okay, no, I'm not missing. Okay, here we go. We're doing this, and then we're doing this. Okay, these little pieces we're gonna set aside. This piece goes here. So these little strips we're gonna set aside, and this strip we're gonna set aside. We're gonna work with the rest for now. Okay, I'm gonna bring in my adhesive, and we'll work with this one first. So I don't want all my cards to look the same. So each one is just slightly different. So I'm just gonna put that in the center. So you've got this nice 1/16 of an inch border. And then this one, I'm putting this strip down the edge. So I'll just put a little bit of multi-purpose glue. I get so many questions about this bottle. I purchased this bottle on Amazon, and then I just filled it with our, let me show you what glue here. This glue here, this Tombow Mono liquid glue. So, and that's what I use. I love this because it's a finer tip. Now, I don't have any problems with it clogging. However, a few people have commented that they do have problems with it clogging. I don't know if it's just because I craft almost daily, so I'm using it all the time. And the other thing that I'm really good at is I will not let this sit open. I'm always closing it. Like almost immediately after I use it, I close it. Okay, so this hangs off just a little bit, so we're just gonna trim this. And we are gonna trim this piece a little bit before we stick it on our card base, but we'll come back to that. And then we'll do this one. This time I'm gonna flip it over so I have the back side showing. Okay, and then this piece, I'm gonna add a little bit of glue just to the top of this narrow piece. And then add this. Why is this a little bit shorter? Okay, this is 3 inches, right? Yeah, and okay, well, that is 3 inches as well, but it's just a little bit too short. So this scrap that I said we weren't gonna use, we're gonna bring that back in. And we'll trim this off. And then we're gonna stick this. So that's gonna go right on here. I think this must have been my last panel. I find when you cut a 12-inch piece and you're cutting at 3 inches, or any measurement really, and you're cutting equal size pieces, your last measurement is always, like if you have leftover, it always seems to be just a little bit different. Because if you look, this border is a little wider than this border. So this one has a little bit of a narrower border. So this was the last one that I cut. So it's probably just a smidge wider than 3 inches. But that is okay. We will make it work. So I'm going to put that here. Hello, Alice. Welcome. We are making 6 cards today from one piece of 6 by 12 inch patterned paper. Okay, so next up, I'm going to bring in my card bases and attach all of these pieces to my card bases. So like I said at the beginning, let's cover my glue here. Like I said at the beginning, I am using our note cards and envelopes. However, you can definitely just take these panels and add them to a regular size card base, which measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when it's folded. So these are slightly smaller. So I'm just folding them all again, because what you're gonna do for one, you may as well do for all of them. All of my cards, get them all folded. Okay, and then we're gonna add these panels to our bases. Gonna go on here like that, and then tell you planning these videos where I'm making multiple cards using like my pattern paper has been great for getting lots of Christmas cards done. I think I'm almost set. Okay, we need to cut that one slightly, so we'll come back to that one. Okay, so I've got those 3 panels on there. And then this one, we're gonna bring our paper trimmer in and we're just gonna trim it down ever so slightly, because we added this strip of Lost Lagoon cardstock down the side. So it's a little bit wider and I want there to be an even border on both sides. So I'm just gonna trim it down, because we started at a 3-inch piece. So I'm gonna trim it down so that it's 3 inches. And this narrow strip, I'm gonna add to the inside. Okay, so we'll bring this back, set this aside. It's really thin, you can hardly see the pattern on it, but it'll still add just a little something on the inside of the card. So we'll put that in the center like that. So we've got a little bit of a wider border on this one because we don't have that border all the way around the edges like we did with the Lost Lagoon. Because I really wanted to try to get just use that one piece of Lost Lagoon cardstock. Okay. And then just add a narrow bead of glue down here. And then we're going to pop this on here. Just kind of center it. Pop that on there just to add a little bit of pattern on the inside of our card. Okay, now we're going to start, before we come back to these, we're going to start decorating. So I'm going to pull back this card. So this is with the A-side pattern with your mat. And what I've done is I have, from white cardstock, I took this tag die and I cut just a portion of the tag. So this measures about, it's just shy of 3 inches. So it's about 2 3/4 of an inch. Now, if you don't have this die set, you can just cut a tag. So just cut it so it measures about 2 3/4 by 2 1/4. So 2 1/4 wide by 2 3/4. Punch a hole, angle cut the ends, and you're set to go. All right, so we're going to stamp our greeting on here. And I am going to use this one that says, "We wish you a Merry Christmas." And it's from that same stamp set. So the stamp set that we're working with. And I'm going to use Lost Lagoon ink. And I'm going to stamp it right on here. So this is shaped kind of like a tree so that you can actually die cut it using one of those tree dies. We're not going to do that this time though. Okay, so I've got that stamped. I'm going to take a little bit of one of my ribbons, feed it through, and then I'll trim. I always try to leave my ribbon on my spool and work with it if I can, just so that I don't waste. And then I'm taking the silver twine and wrapping it around. And this is going to pinch these together so that our ribbon doesn't fall off. And I'm just going to tie a bow. Tie it nice and tight, trim off the excess. And then we're going to add this to our card using some dimensionals. And I finally pulled out some regular size dimensionals. For the longest time, I only had mini dimensionals here. I was using up so many of them. Peel off the backing. And then I'm going to line this up with the edge of the Lost Lagoon cardstock. And just pop that on there. And then we'll add our embellishments. So I'll bring in my sequins. And grab my, take your pick tool, and I'm going to add the clear ones. Just add 3 of them there. And there we go. There is our first card. Quick and easy. Super fun. All right. Next up, and I've got another set that I'll show you at the end of the video that I created using different pattern paper so that you can kind of see the difference. All right, so now we're gonna take this piece and actually, you know those pieces that we had left over? No, that's not gonna work. Okay, all right. So for this one, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do something fun with this one. We're gonna take one of each of the trees that we cut using the Merriest Trees dies. And we're gonna stack them on top of each other. And for this one, I think I will use mini dimensionals. So I'm gonna use some dimensionals for this one. And I'm gonna line this tree up with the top of this tree. See how it's made to perfectly line up so that it gives you a bit of dimension. And then I'm going to repeat that with this one. So again, if you don't have this die set, then just have a look in your collection and just see what you have, whether it's a stamped image or a die or a punch, that is just, you want something that's just a little bit larger. And then we'll pop this one on the top here so that it looks like that. Now I wanted to give it even a little bit, it needed a little bit of zhuzh. So what I decided to do was pull out my shimmery white embossing paste, and we're going to add a little bit of snow to this. So this is a product from the annual catalog. We have it in both regular white and shimmery white. This one just has a little bit of shimmer to it. I'm going to use my palette knife, and I'm going to add just a little bit of snow just to the bottom and to one side. So the bottom of each layer. And this is going to give it a little bit of texture. There's a little bit too much on there. And just add a little bit of color to our tree. You could also, if you've got some of that foam, or not, it's not called foam. What was it called? Remember the stuff that we've carried it a few times. And you could heat it up and it would puff up. I can't remember what it's called. You could use some of that. You could use some pearlized accents. You could use embellishments to decorate your tree. You do want to clean your palette knife right after you use it. You don't want to let that sit on there because it does dry pretty quickly. Okay, and then to stick this on here, what I'm going to do is, we're going to need to let this dry before we finish this off, but I'm going to use, actually let's use regular dimensionals. So I'm going to put 2 dimensionals on this side, like on the bottom of my tree, but then I'm going to use flat adhesive on the top of my tree. And the reason I'm doing that is because, can you see how thick this is? Because there's layer upon layer of dimensionals here, and it's flat at the bottom. So this will just balance it out just a little bit. Actually, let's put it straight so that I can see that my tree is straight. Okay, and we still need to finish this off, but I'm gonna set it aside and we'll come back to this card towards the end, just to make sure that that dries so we don't make a big mess of this card. So I'll set that right there. Okay, next up is this one. So the one that we've added the border to down the side. And I have, for this one, I have a white circle. So this was die cut from the Stylish Shapes. It's about 2 1/8 of an inch. And it is the 4th smallest Stylish Shapes circle. And I've got 2 of those. I think it's the 3rd smallest tree. I cut one from Vellum and one from Lost Lagoon. And we're gonna add our circle first. It's gonna go on there like that. And then we're gonna add this one, and we're gonna use dimensionals for this one. I'm gonna cover my glue here. And this is gonna go on here a little bit closer to the right. And then this guy, I'm just gonna add a dimensional right there because I know that that's gonna get covered over because our vellum tree is gonna go on just a little bit lower and closer to the left. All right. Now, what we want to do is we want to stamp our greeting. So I'm going to pull in my white piece, and I'm going to use the greeting that says, hoping your home is filled with the spirit of the season. And I'm going to stamp that. I think I'm going to use, no, I'm going to use Lost Lagoon again. So I'm going to stamp that with some Lost Lagoon. The trees really are pretty. This is a great stamp set. So I'm just going to stamp that on one of the edges. Close that up. We'll set it over here. I'll bring back my paper trimmer and trim this so it's straight across. So you really just want a greeting that is a little bit longer and narrower. Okay, and then this is going to go across here like this. And I'm going to add a dimensional, and I'm going to use mini dimensionals for this. I'm going to put one here and then another one on this side. And my greeting is going to go all the way across. Actually, before we stick our greeting on, I want to add a little bit of twine. So I'm going to take my silver twine and tie a bow. And we'll use a mini glue dot to adhere it. And here's my take your pick tool. We're going to add this, let's see, we'll do it right about there. Oops. And then we're going to add our greeting. And you just want to make sure that your greeting is covering that dimensional that you added underneath your vellum. You don't want to be able to see that dimensional. And I'm trying to kind of center my greeting as well. I think that looks like it's straight. And then we'll just trim off the edges. And there we go. We've got, this is the second one that we fully finished. So there's card number 2. Okay. And then for card number 3, we're going to bring in this one here, and we're going to bring in our white. We're going to stamp this greeting again, and we'll do it in Lost Lagoon. Thank you so much for sharing, Alice. All right, so we're gonna stamp that right on this white. And then I'm gonna use the Modern Oval to punch it out. Again, if you don't have this oval punch, you can use any shape, any die cut, any punch, whatever fits with the greeting that you're working with. I always try to give, you know, different suggestions in case you don't have what I have. So we'll punch that out. And I will come back and add a full supply list in the description of this video for you in case there are any supplies that you want to purchase. So now I'm taking this thinner 1/8 inch ribbon. Actually, you know what? I didn't tie a bow. What I did was I added a little strip of seal adhesive in behind, and I did kind of like a figure 8. So just like that, and then I'll trim, and then we'll add some dimensionals to the back of this. I'm going to put one over top. That will serve to hold that together. Then we'll add a few more. Let's do one more. And then this is going to go on here just like that. And then we can add some embellishments. I keep misplacing my take your pick tool. All right, and there is card number 3. So another quick and easy one. All right, card number 4, we're gonna pull in one of our empty card bases or our blank card bases, and we're gonna grab 3 of these strips that we cut. And we're gonna add those to our card base. And I'm going to use seal for this just because I want to be able to move them around if I need to. So I'm gonna kind of position this so that there's an even border on the left and right, but a little bit less space on the top. And then I'm gonna flip this one over so we have a bit of contrast. And I'm not pushing down yet because I want to make sure I get my spacing right before I commit. See, you can see that I'm way off. I'm lined up almost at the bottom here. So I need to just kind of move these up a little bit. Okay, I think that's good. So I've got an even space on the left and the right, and my fold is not very good. Let me just redo this here. Okay, now let me fix my layers. Make sure that they're straight and evenly distanced. Okay, that looks good. So that's the base for this one. And then we're gonna grab our big tree, and I also die cut a circle. This is the second smallest circle from the Stylish Shapes, and we're going to use the greeting that says love and joy. And obviously this is not going to fit on here, but we're going to use some markers to make it fit. I just realized I don't have my stamp cleaner. I'm going to grab that. Now, what did I do with it? Oh, I do have it. It's right here. Okay. All right. So we are going to start by using some Lost Lagoon ink. Now you can use markers for all of this, but I prefer to use ink if I can, just because I like the way the ink covers photopolymer stamps better than the markers. So I'm going to ink up the word love, and because it's photopolymer, I'm lining it right up with the edge of the word, the edge of the stamp, the ink pad with the edge of the word love, so that it's only inking up that word. I'll stamp that down, and then I'm going to clean my stamp. And then I'm going to repeat that with the word joy. And stamp the word joy on here. And then clean my stamp. And now for the word, the ampersand, I obviously can't just ink up using my ink pad, just right in the center of the stamp. So my marker will come in handy for that. So I'm going to use Pretty Peacock for this. And so this is one of our Stampin' Write markers. This is not one of our Stampin' Blends. So our Stampin' Write markers are water-based markers, which allow you to use them right on your stamps, and they'll clean off nicely. I'll just give it a huff, and then I'm going to stamp right in between. And then I've got my love and joy all in that circle. So that's a way that you can kind of change your stamps or alter your stamps when you go to stamp them to make them work for you. Okay, so now behind our tree, we're going to add some of this adhesive. I'm going to bring back my silver again, and we're going to just do that same kind of figure 8 loop. And you can use twine for this as well. It doesn't have to be ribbon. And then I'll trim it. And again, we'll use some dimensionals on the back to pop it up. We'll put one right there, and then a couple at the bottom. And our tree is going to go right in the middle. Like that. And then we'll take another dimensional, and I'm just going to slide this under the tree just a little bit. I'll add a little bit of adhesive on here, and then this is going to go right on here like this. So now this is still pretty plain. So I was looking through my embellishments to see what I could use, and I just didn't find anything that was quite right. So I pulled out my pearlized enamel effects in white. So this comes in a package of 3. You get white, red, and black in one package, and then I think we have a gold, silver, and copper in another package as well. These can be found in the annual catalog. And I'm just going to add some little dots. So it looks like I've added little pearls to the Christmas tree. You could also you could make like the look of a garland if you wanted to. So I'm going to leave it at that. And then I will want to set that aside so that those dry. But there is card number 4. Okay, so I'm going to set this over here. And then our last card, well, and then we have to come back to the one that we had started. So our last card, we're going to pull in that last card base. I'm going to make sure that this is folded properly before I start. Line up these edges. Okay. All right. So we've got that. Now, I have, from my pattern paper, I've got this one strip left and then this piece of Lost Lagoon cardstock. We're going to attach those 2 pieces together. And I was trying to think of a way, there's lots of white space on this card. So that's when I decided to pull in my stencils, and I've got this great snowflake stencil. from the Abundant Beauty decorative masks. So this is one of the stencils from that package. Now, if you don't have stencils, you can stamp. You could stamp a snowflake background. You could just do some ink blending just in the background. You could do the packaging technique in the background. So there's lots of different things that you could do to add a subtle background. So I'm going to use Lost Lagoon ink. I'm going to kind of put my stencil at an angle, just ink up my stamp, and then, or ink up my blending brush, and then very lightly, because I don't want it to be dark. I just want a nice subtle background. Just kind of going around, and I'm avoiding these straight edges. So just like that. Actually, we're going to add another little one up here. All right, so it's very subtle. I just wanted a little tiny bit of pattern in the background. So if you're stamping and you're using Lost Lagoon ink, you might want to stamp off just so it's a little bit lighter. Okay. Actually, let's do our stamping before we close that up. I'm going to bring back my white and this same greeting that we used on one of the previous cards. And stamp it. And then we can close this up. And of course, you can also add some stenciling to the inside of your card. You could add it to your envelope flap. So you could go all out if you wanted to. I want to cut off the bottom of my letters here. Okay. Now for this one, we are using the second largest size tree cut from vellum, and then the third largest cut from Lost Lagoon ink. We're going to add this strip to the bottom of our card. And then we're going to add this on here, and this one's going to go on flat. And so I'm going to strategically place my adhesive up the right hand side of my tree, kind of put it out there. And then this guy's going to get popped up using dimensionals. It's going to go a little further down and off to the right. And then I'm going to take some twine or some ribbon and tie a bow. And this is going to go on here. We'll use a mini glue dot for this. Pop that right in here. So this tree is popped up, so I'm adding my like the bulk of the knot, like where the knot is from our bow, that is on the vellum. It's not on top of this, so it's not adding extra bulk. It's kind of evening everything off. And then this is going to go over top like this, and we can trim this a little bit. And we'll angle cut this. This is going to go on. I think I'm going to put it right there. So I'm going to add a little dimensional to one side and then some flat adhesive to this side where it's going to sit over top of the tree. And pop that on here like that. Now that dimensional is lifting up this edge of the tree, because remember, we don't have a ton of adhesive on the back of that tree. So I'm going to sneak a mini glue dot right underneath where it will be covered over by this greeting so that it holds that down. Okay, now our trees again are pretty plain, so I'm going to bring back that pearlized enamel effects, and I'm going to add some dots. To both the Lost Lagoon ones and the vellum. Oh, let's add another one down here. All right, and there is our 5th card. Isn't it pretty? So pretty. Okay, we're gonna set that aside and we're gonna bring back this one. So this is the one where we added that shimmery embossing paste. It's all dry now. It doesn't take long to dry. And we're gonna finish that off. So I've got this little scrap piece of white here. I think it's big enough. So I'm gonna use some of my Lost Lagoon ink and my Love and Joy and stamp right on here. And then I'm gonna cut this straight and angle, or not angle, I'm gonna flag it. And then I'll trim this down a little bit. And I'm gonna take my bone folder, curl it, and it is going to get tucked right under here. So I'm gonna use a mini glue dot right where this raised part is. And then I'll put a little bit of multi-purpose glue right here. And it's gonna get tucked under here. You do wanna make sure it doesn't stick off of the edge, or if it does, not too much. So I'll do that, and then I'll take a little bit of my twine. Tie a bow. We'll cover this glue, and I'm going to use a mini glue dot to stick it down. And then all 6 of our cards are done. That's going to go right on here like that. Okay, so let me bring them all back in so that you can see all of the cards, and then I'll share the alternate idea as well using a different pattern paper. Okay, so here is one of the cards, and then here is another patterned paper. So for this one, this is a Walk in the Park DSP and Pretty Peacock ink, or Pretty Peacock ink and Pretty Peacock cardstock. And for this one, I did have an extra scrap, like in addition, like above and beyond the 6 by 12 inch piece. So I put a strip across there. Whereas this one, I didn't have any extra scraps of it. So you could pull in an extra piece of cardstock if you wanted, but there's those 2. And then let's do this one. So this was the one that we made today. And then this is the one using the A Walk in the Park patterned paper. So this is the back side of this one. I'll slide this over. Okay, so that is card number 2. Here is the other one. So this one, I think this is one of my favorites. I like this one. And then there it is with the A Walk in the Park DSP. And then the first one that we made, so there's today's version, and then here is the other version. Okay, and then our 2 that we need to be careful with because it will take a little bit for these to dry. So then there was this one with the pearlized enamel effects, and then here is the A Walk in the Park version. So that one there. And then here is the A Walk in the Park version and the Winter Meadow version. So you can see that you can use these ideas with any patterned paper, and you could even replicate these ideas using different dies or different stamps. It's just so pretty. There's so much potential with this card design. So, and all you need is some card bases and a 6 by 12 inch piece of patterned paper, and then a few bits and pieces of white cardstock, and you're good. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you recreate these cards, whether they're note card size or with this pattern paper or with a different pattern paper, and you share them on social media, make sure that you tag me because I would love to see them. All right, thanks so much for watching. Have a great weekend, guys.